It's been a while since I made a video talking about what's in my camera bag, what I bring for an average day. So it's high time I posted a new one, because the last time I posted one of these videos was like 3 years ago, and what I bring has changed a lot. I've added a lot of new stuff, and I want to talk about it because I'm into gear, and you probably are too if you're watching this. Let's first talk about the bag that I use. I'm using the Peak Design 6-liter everyday sling. Had this for a few years. Before I had this one, I had the 5-liter sling, and I absolutely love this bag. It's small enough to be easy to move around in the park, but it's big enough to hold all my equipment. It fits over one shoulder, so when I sit down on a ride, I can just rotate the bag in front of me, and I don't have to take it off when I'm getting on and off of rides. Also, it keeps me disciplined because I can't fit every single piece of the gear that I want to bring into it, so I always have to be kind of discerning about what I bring. So that's the bag. The camera, it's the OM System OM1 Mark II, and the lens that lives on this when it's out in the park, not on a ride, not doing anything specific, is the 12 to 200 millimeter f3.5 to 6.3. It's just an all-around super zoom lens. It's weather sealed, focuses very quickly, very high image quality, gives me a 24 to 400 millimeter equivalent focal length. I can do anything with that focal length out and about in the park. The downside is the aperture is not very wide, so it does need light. So in full sunlight outside, it does great. Even in a lot of shows that are well lit, I found that it gives good results. So for a walk around, do it all lens, you really can't beat it. Next are a few other lenses that I bring. I bring the 17 millimeter f1.2 because that's my do it all dark ride lens. It's wide enough, it's long enough, it's super fast, it's super sharp, it focuses quickly. It's just the perfect thing I've found for dark rides, so it always comes with me to the park. Even if I bring nothing else, I bring that lens. I also bring the 75 millimeter f1.8, which is a portrait lens. Most people think, why would you bring a portrait lens to a theme park? Because it also works really well on dark rides. It has a fast aperture, it has a lot of reach. It has, in 35 millimeter terms, as a 150 millimeter reach with an f1.8 aperture. That's insane. So if you want to punch in and get details on dark rides or on any rides, that's a great lens to do it. This one is small and it focuses fast enough for dark rides. Some portrait lenses don't. This one does. In case I want to do long exposures, I need something to support my camera with. So I'm going to bring either the Really Right Stuff Safari clamp. You saw me do a video on that already. Or I'll bring this. This is the Mantis Pod Pro tripod. I also have a remote release. So if I want to do a long exposure and not bump my camera while I'm triggering that exposure, I can plug this in and just trigger it remotely. I bring the L bracket for the OM1 bottom metal. This way it gives me more options when I'm attaching it to the tripod. I can attach it vertically or I can attach it horizontally. I also bring some filters for long exposures and other things. I have a 6-stop variable neutral density filter in here, and I have a circular polarizing filter. I don't use them often, but when you need a filter, you need a filter. I bring these in the biggest size for my biggest lens, and then I bring step-up rings to adapt the filters down to my smaller lenses. So that's pretty much it for the photography equipment, plus the DJI Osmo that I'm filming on right now. You can't see it, but it's because it's behind the camera. I also bring a power bank and a cable to keep my equipment charged, especially the DJI. It's going to run out of battery. For the OM1, I bring 2 spare batteries. I only really need 1 spare battery because the battery life on this camera is so good, but I like having 2 just in case I really want to go nuts one day. I bring a lens cleaning cloth because on a day like today, my lenses are going to get wet, my front elements are going to get misty and moist. Might get splashed on rides, I might get smudged, so I want to be able to always clean my lenses off. And then I also bring sunscreen, small little aerosol sunscreen, and a folding collapsible water bottle, so I can stop at water fountains or bottle fillers, fill this up, and I always have plenty of water. It's more of a problem in the summertime, it's more of a problem in Florida, but you still need to stay hydrated, and this is a good way that I've found to do it, where I can carry water with me, but I'm not carrying a big heavy water bottle with me. That's it. That's really it. Oh, I've got my Peak Design cuff around my wrist. I use that when I'm filming with my DJI Osmo on rides and I don't want to worry about dropping the camera. I have some retention built in. That's it, real simple. And I found with that combination, I can shoot everything. You know, close-up stuff on dark rides, wider frames on dark rides, all kinds of parkscapes, character interactions, everything. You can do it all with this 2-lens kit. If you really needed to, if you were tight on space, you could leave behind the portrait lens, or if you wanted more lenses, I might leave behind all of the long exposure support. I don't necessarily need it. It's a nice luxury, but I don't need it. I could make room for 3 or 4 more small lenses in my bag if I left stuff like this home. So now let's walk around the park and look at some use cases for all this stuff. All right, so use case for the zoom lens is just to have the ability to get any shot you want very quickly when you're walking around without having to change lenses. So even if I don't have that particular lens with me, what I try to do is when I'm walking around from place to place inside the park, I try to have my most versatile lens on me. So if it's not a zoom lens, it's usually my longest prime, like my 75mm, because I'm more likely to see something far away and want to get that shot without having to run over to it. A good example was this morning. I was walking down Main Street and the castle looked really cool in the fog and the mist, and I could get a couple of really neat zoomed in shots, and I didn't have to change lenses to do it. Well, now let's test out the a dark ride use case for the 17mm lens. I'm just going to use what's nearby and what has a short wait time. Winnie the Pooh, which has recently reopened. You can hear the construction going on behind me for Tiana's. That's going to open in a month. Let's change lenses and get on this ride. So now, for my next lens, I want to show you how the 75mm performs. I want to go over to Fantasyland to find a ride for that, but between Critter Country and Fantasyland, I'm going to go through Galaxy's Edge. So I could either change lenses to the lens I know I'm going to need once I get to my destination, or I can go back to this zoom lens. That's what I did, because I don't know what I'm going to encounter between here and there. We're going through Galaxy's Edge. There's a lot of cool characters and stuff running around here, so I want to be ready for that. So I switched back, then I'll switch lenses again while I'm in the queue. So my decision to use the zoom lens for my walk through Galaxy's Edge paid off. I encountered R2-D2 running around by the Millennium Falcon, and I already had the lens I needed because there's usually a big crowd around a lot of the characters. And with a tight lens like the 75, I might not have been able to shoot through the gap in the people. So with the zoom lens, I just zoomed to the widest setting and got close and got low and was able to get some video. I wouldn't have been able to do that with the portrait lens. I probably would not have been able to shoot through a gap in the crowd around someone like R2. So now I switched to the 75 as I left Galaxy's Edge. And now we're gonna go over to Pinocchio's Daring Journey with the portrait lens, because I like to use a lens like that with a lot of reach to punch in and look at small details. And Pinocchio is a great ride for that because I like to shoot all the little Jiminy Cricket figures that appear multiple times throughout that ride. So let's go do that. that gives you an idea of some of the things you can do with a portrait lens on a ride like Pinocchio. A lens like this is also really good for Small World. It's also really good for Pirates of the Caribbean. You can even make it work on something like Haunted Mansion, but you really gotta make sure your settings are dialed. And so now I'm gonna do one more ride because I wanna show you the kinds of rides that you can do with the zoom lens. Like I mentioned earlier, that really useful range is kind of countered by the fact that the aperture isn't awesome. So you need a ride with a lot of light, which means you need something outdoors. So we're gonna go to the Jungle Cruise. I've gone over all of the lenses in my bag, it's time to talk about the long exposure equipment that I brought. So to do that, I think I want to head over to California Adventure and try a daytime long exposure of, I forget what its actual name is, but everyone calls it Mickey's Wheel of Death. So we're going to go over there and we're going to try a long exposure in the middle of the day using the tripod, the remote release, and some neutral density filters. And we'll see what we can get. It might not be perfect, but it'll at least show what the equipment does. Listen to the screams. That's not Incredicoaster. That is Mickey's Wheel of Death, where people are screaming. So I just set up the camera here on the tripod behind me. Just found a nice flat spot, clamped it in, found a composition I liked, and then for this one, it's full on daylight, and I needed about a 60-second exposure to get the motion blur that I'm hoping to get out of this image. I want the whole outer spokes of the wheel to disappear. So I had to stack on a neutral density filter cranked all the way to ND32. I threw my polarizing filter on there too, just because it cuts down a little bit on light. Had to close my aperture all the way down to f22. ISO at the base ISO of 200. And then I even used the virtual live ND mode. I had to use everything this camera has in order to get this exposure in one shot with minimal post-processing. So this is not what I usually use my long exposure stuff for during the day. I usually use it at night, but I'm not going to be here at night, so I wanted to film something for you to show you just that I actually do use all this stuff and it does all fit in the bag for if you want to do live exposures. And you really kind of only need it for really long exposures. The image stabilization on these modern cameras is so good that if you're doing enough stuff up to 5 or 10 seconds, you can probably just handhold that or rest that camera on something nearby, a trash can, a fence, a railing, a tree. You don't need a tripod, you don't need a remote release. So I find myself carrying these items less and less, but again, if I'm going for the day and I don't know what I might do, or if I want to have the option to do everything possible, I'll throw them in the bag. I think that's just about it for the video. The only thing I haven't used is the battery charger, and my DJI is almost out of battery, so I guess I can do that now. The nice thing about this power bank is it also charges my phone, it also charges my Apple Watch, and it can charge 2 other devices at the same time. So I can plug in everything I have to this at the end of the day and get everything charged back up. And today that feature will be really useful because after I leave Disneyland, I'm heading straight over to Knott's Berry Farm for Knott's Scary Farm. So I'm going to need to have all my batteries topped off and ready to go for, you know, an event that's going to run till 2 in the morning. So this is kind of cool. And this is capable of fast charging through the USB-C port. So things like my DJI that support fast charging can get a charge really, really quick. I can take this from probably 20% back to 100% in probably less than 20 minutes. So I'm just going to sit here and finish my drink and charge my DJI. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed taking a little look into what's in my daily park bag when I come here for a day of random photography. I hope to do more of these videos soon. Maybe I'm going to get into more equipment reviews now that I've kind of covered my fundamentals series. I want to get into a little more equipment and a little more kind of how to do some of the types of photography that I do. So if that interests you,
Make sure you subscribe, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thanks for watching.